I never cared much about trophies. People always assumed I did because one of my medals sat in a glass case in our living room, polished so carefully that it caught the morning sunlight. They thought I looked at it every day with pride. The truth was different. I looked at it because it reminded me of the people who almost never came home. That medal wasn't just mine. It carried the names of friends who trusted me when everything around us was falling apart during the biggest rescue operation of my career. I survived. Some of them didn't. Every scratch on its surface reminded me of a choice, a promise, and a price I could never forget. My wife, Evelyn, used to stand beside that display and smile. "I'll never get tired of looking at this," she would say. Then she would wrap her arms around me and whisper, "I'm so proud of you." Those words always meant more than the medal itself. That was why I never imagined she would become the reason that medal broke my heart. The charity gala was supposed to be simple. The city's Rescue Heroes Foundation held it every year to raise money for emergency response teams and families who had lost loved ones in the line of duty. Every guest wore formal clothes. Cameras flashed everywhere, and reporters waited near the entrance. I adjusted my jacket and checked my phone. "Me asterisk, I'm here. Where are you?" A moment later, Evelyn replied. Evelyn asterisk inside. "Come find me." I smiled. After a long week, I was looking forward to spending one peaceful evening with my wife. As I stepped into the ballroom, conversations blended with soft music. Crystal lights reflected across the polished floor while people greeted one another with warm smiles. Several guests nodded at me. "Good evening. It's great to see you. You deserve tonight." I thanked each of them before searching for Evelyn. Then I saw her. She stood near the stage, laughing. Standing beside her was Ryan Brooks. The moment I recognized him, my smile disappeared. Ryan was Evelyn's former fiancé. She had always insisted they stayed friends. "He means nothing to me anymore," she had told me countless times. I wanted to believe her. I really did. I walked closer. Ryan turned toward another guest, raising a glass. That's when I noticed something shining on his suit. My steps stopped. My breathing slowed. "No." I blinked once, then twice. My eyes weren't playing tricks on me. Pinned proudly to Ryan's jacket was my Medal of Valor. Every tiny mark, every scratch, even the small dent near the bottom that happened during the rescue years ago. There was no mistake. It was mine. For several seconds, I couldn't move. The room became strangely quiet, even though everyone was still talking around me. I finally forced myself forward. "Evelyn." She turned with an easy smile. "There you are." I kept my voice calm. "Can we talk?" She nodded without concern. "Sure." I glanced toward Ryan. "Why is he wearing my medal?" She looked at Ryan, then back at me, almost amused. "Oh, that." "Yes," I answered quietly. "That." She waved one hand dismissively. "It's only for tonight." I stared at her. "What?" Ryan forgot one of his awards at home. This event is important to him. He needed something to complete his outfit. For a moment, I wondered if she was joking. She wasn't. I looked at Ryan. He smiled as though nothing unusual had happened. "Looks good, doesn't it?" he asked. I ignored him. I looked only at Evelyn. "You opened my display case?" "I did." "You took my medal?" "Yes." "You gave it to your ex?" She sighed loudly. "Don't make this into a scene." I felt my chest tighten. "That's not a decoration." She folded her arms. "It's one evening." I shook my head. "No." She frowned. "What do you mean, no? That medal isn't jewelry." She rolled her eyes. "You're overreacting." I looked directly at her. "That's not a decoration." She said nothing. I swallowed the lump in my throat before speaking again. "That's my blood." For the first time, Ryan stopped smiling. Before anyone could speak again, another couple approached. "Ryan," one man said warmly, "congratulations. That medal is incredible." Ryan smiled. "Thank you. You must have done something extraordinary." He laughed softly. "I've had some memorable days." The words hit me like a punch. I wanted to tell everyone the truth. I wanted to rip the medal from his jacket. Instead, I stood there while strangers admired the symbol of the worst day of my life. Another guest pointed toward Ryan. "I've read about that award. So impressive. I didn't know you received one." Ryan simply smiled again. Evelyn leaned closer to me. "Please don't embarrass me." I looked at her in disbelief. "Embarrass you?" "Everyone's watching." I slowly turned my head. She was right. People were watching. Not because of Ryan. Because they could see the look on my face. Confusion. Shock. Pain. No one spoke. The silence felt heavier than any argument. I realized something in that moment. The woman who once said she was proud of my sacrifice no longer understood what that sacrifice meant. Maybe she hadn't for a long time. I reached toward Ryan. For one dangerous second, he flinched. Instead of grabbing the medal, I straightened his collar. "You should be careful," I said quietly. He blinked. "Why?" "Some things are heavier than they look." Without waiting for an answer, I turned around. Behind me, I heard more congratulations directed at Ryan. I heard glasses clink. I heard laughter. No one stopped me. No one called my name. I walked out of the ballroom with empty hands and a broken heart, leaving another man to wear the medal I had earned with my own sacrifice. I didn't drive home right away. Instead, I sat alone inside my car with both hands gripping the steering wheel. My reflection stared back from the windshield, but I barely recognized the man looking at me. My phone buzzed. "Evelyn asterisk, where are you?" I didn't answer. A second message appeared. "Evelyn asterisk, stop acting like this." I laughed once, but there wasn't any humor in it. Acting? I started the engine and drove home in silence. The house felt colder than usual. The glass display case where my Medal of Valor had rested stood open. An empty space stared back at me. It looked wrong, like someone had ripped a page out of my life. The front door opened behind me. "I knew you'd come here," Evelyn said. I turned slowly. She slipped off her heels and sighed. "Can we please talk like adults? I've been waiting for that all evening." She crossed her arms. "I don't understand why you walked out." I looked at her. "You don't?" "No." I took a slow breath. "Then maybe we should start much earlier." She frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means I'm remembering things I should have noticed years ago." She looked confused. "When we first met during that flood rescue, you told me courage mattered more than recognition. I still believe that. I believed you. I remembered the first time we worked together. She had coordinated volunteers while I led a rescue team into collapsing buildings. Afterward, she smiled and said, "You never think about yourself." I had smiled back. "And you never stop helping people." That was the woman I fell in love with. That was the woman I married. Or, at least the woman I thought I married. "Evelyn," I asked quietly, "when did Ryan become part of our marriage?" Her expression hardened. "Don't start. I'm asking. He's an old friend." "I've heard that before." "We work together." "I've heard that, too." "You're overthinking everything." I looked at her for several seconds. "Every fundraiser." She blinked. "What?" "Every awards dinner." "So?" "Every charity event." "And Ryan was always there." She shrugged. "So were hundreds of other people. But he was always beside you. Because we're colleagues." I nodded slowly. I ignored it. "What are you talking about?" I ignored the late phone calls. They were about work. I ignored the lunches. They were meetings. I ignored the weekends. We organized events. I ignored every excuse because I trusted you. She stepped closer. "You should trust me." I did. The room became quiet. She looked away first. Finally, she spoke. "It was just a medal." Those words landed harder than any insult. I stared at her. "Just a medal?" "Yes." "You really believe that?" "It wasn't permanent. My friends never came home." She frowned. "What does that have to do with this?" I felt something inside me crack. Men died beside me earning that medal. She didn't answer. They trusted me. Silence. They believed I'd bring them home. More silence. "That medal isn't metal." She rubbed her forehead. "I think you're being dramatic." "Dramatic? You embarrassed me tonight." I almost laughed. "I embarrassed you?" Everyone was watching. They watched another man accept praise for my sacrifice. "You could have handled it privately." I tried. "You raise your voice." I barely whispered. "You made Ryan uncomfortable." I stared at her in disbelief. "Ryan?" "Yes." "What about me?" She hesitated. "I didn't think." "I know." She looked hurt. "I never wanted to upset you." "But you did." "It wasn't intentional." "It didn't have to be." Neither of us spoke. For the first time since our wedding, I wondered whether she had ever understood what that medal represented. Maybe she loved the story. Maybe she loved the applause. Maybe she loved being married to a hero. But did she ever understand the cost? My phone vibrated on the kitchen counter. Neither of us moved. It buzzed again. I picked it up. The message came from an unknown number. Someone important noticed what happened tonight. I read it twice, then a third time. Evelyn looked at me. Who is it? I don't know. What does it mean? I locked the screen. I guess we're about to find out. Outside, the night remained silent. Somewhere, someone had seen everything. And whoever they weren't planning to ignore it. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Ryan standing beneath the ballroom lights with my Medal of Valor pinned to his jacket, while strangers praised him for sacrifices he had never made. By sunrise, my phone wouldn't stop vibrating. Messages filled the screen. David asterisk, have you seen the photos? Lisa asterisk, please tell me this isn't real. Unknown asterisk, the internet is going crazy. I opened one message. Someone had uploaded pictures from the gala. There I was, staring at Ryan. There was Evelyn beside him. There was my medal. Thousands of comments flooded the page. Asterisk, how could someone wear another person's award? Asterisk, who approved this? Asterisk, this dishonors every rescuer who earned one. Asterisk, I locked my phone. I didn't want to read another word. When I arrived at headquarters, conversation stopped. People looked away the moment they noticed me. Others whispered anyway. I walked toward my office. A coworker caught up with me. I'm sorry. For what? This shouldn't have happened. I nodded once. Thank you. Inside my office, I tried to bury myself in paperwork. It didn't work. Someone knocked. It was Evelyn. She stepped inside and shut the door. You've been ignoring my calls. I've been working. She sighed. Everyone is making this much bigger than it is. I looked up. Really? It was one evening. It was my medal. It came back. That's not the point. She rubbed her temples. I don't understand why people care so much. They care because symbols matter. They're overreacting. No, they are. Before I could answer, another knock interrupted us. Ryan walked in without waiting. There you are, he said with a grin. Neither of us replied. He shrugged. You two still talking about last night? I stood. What do you want? He laughed. Relax. I'm perfectly calm. He pointed toward my phone. I saw the comments online. So did I. They'll forget by next week. They shouldn't. He smirked. Honestly, nobody can tell whose medal it is. The room went silent. My fist tightened. For one dangerous second, all I could think about was knocking that smile off his face. Ryan noticed. What? I took one slow breath. Then another. Without saying a word, I walked around him and headed for the door. Behind me, I heard him laugh. See? I told you he'd calm down. I kept walking. If I stayed another second, I wasn't sure I would still be the man I wanted to be. Outside, reporters had already gathered near the entrance. Cameras flashed whenever employees walked past. Questions echoed across the sidewalk. Is the medal authentic? Will there be disciplinary action? Has the foundation responded? I lowered my head and kept moving. By afternoon, the story had spread across rescue organizations nationwide. Board members began calling. Former recipients of the Medal of Valor demanded answers. No one knew what decision would come next. What none of U.S. knew was that someone at the highest level of the Rescue Heroes Foundation had already seen every photograph. Chairman Marcus Hale sat alone in his office, studying the images one by one. He had chaired the awards ceremony years earlier. He remembered every recipient. He remembered every family. He remembered every story behind every medal. When he saw mine hanging from Ryan's jacket, he didn't need anyone to identify it. He recognized the scratch near the lower edge. He remembered shaking my hand after the rescue that changed my life. He quietly called his chief investigator. I want every photograph. Yes, sir. I want witness statements. Immediately. And notify the Ethics Review Board. Understood. The investigator hesitated. Do you believe the reports? Chairman Hale answered without raising his voice. I don't deal in rumors. No, sir. I deal in facts. Minutes later, formal notices began moving through the Foundation's internal system. A review panel was assembled. Evidence requests were issued. Witnesses were contacted. No announcements were made to the public. Not yet. That evening, I sat alone at home, unaware that events far beyond my control had already begun. Somewhere inside Foundation headquarters, Chairman Hale signed a final document placed on his desk. He slid it across the table. His voice remained calm. Bring Evelyn Carter to headquarters tomorrow morning. The room fell silent. The investigation had begun. My phone rang before sunrise. I stared at the unfamiliar number for a moment before answering. Hello, Mr. Carter? Yes. This is the Ethics Review Office of the Rescue Heroes Foundation. We'd like you to come to headquarters this morning. My stomach tightened. Am I in trouble? No, sir. What is this about? We'll explain when you arrive. The call ended. I drove across the city in complete silence. When I reached headquarters, an assistant met me in the lobby. Please come with me. She led me into a conference room where 3 investigators waited beside stacks of documents. None of them looked angry. None of them smiled. The senior investigator gestured toward a chair. Please have a seat. I sat. A recorder was placed on the table. The investigator folded his hands. I'll ask one question first. I nodded. Did you willingly lend your Medal of Valor to Ryan Brooks? The answer came without hesitation. No. He watched my face for several seconds. You never gave permission? Never. You didn't authorize your wife to remove it from your display? No. You didn't know it had been taken? I discovered it at the gala. He wrote something in his notebook. Thank you. Another investigator spoke. What happened after you saw the medal? I asked my wife why Ryan was wearing it. What did she say? She told me it was only for one night. Then, she said Ryan had forgotten one of his awards. And your response? I told her that medal wasn't decoration. The room fell quiet. The legal advisor, sitting near the window, finally spoke. Did you attempt to cause a disturbance? No. Did you threaten Mr. Brooks? No. Did you physically touch him? I adjusted his collar before I left. Nothing else. Nothing. He nodded. Thank you. Meanwhile, in another conference room, Evelyn sat across from a different panel. When I later learned what had happened, every word surprised me. This is a misunderstanding, she had said confidently. It will be cleared up in minutes. One investigator asked, did your husband authorize the medal's use? He wasn't happy about it, but please answer yes or no. She hesitated. I assumed he wouldn't mind. Did he say yes? No. Across the hall, Ryan answered his own questions. He let me borrow it. Can you prove that? He didn't object beforehand. When did you ask him? Ryan paused. I didn't ask directly. The investigators exchanged glances. One of them placed several printed photographs on the table. Each image showed me standing in front of Ryan. One captured me reaching toward the medal. Another showed Evelyn between us. A third clearly captured my expression. The investigator pointed to the photographs. Witnesses state they heard you asking for your medal back. Ryan's smile faded. People misunderstood. The investigator pressed a button. The conference room door opened. 2 guests entered. I recognized them immediately. They had been standing only a few feet away during the gala. The first witness sat down. I heard him ask Mrs. Carter why another man was wearing his medal. The second nodded. I heard him say, "That's my blood." I'll never forget those words. The room became silent. The investigators looked toward Ryan. Would you like to change your statement? Ryan swallowed. No. The senior investigator closed the folder. This is no longer about confusion. Nobody spoke. This concerns misuse of the Foundation's highest civilian honor. Later that afternoon, every participant gathered in the main hearing room. Chairman Marcus Hale entered without ceremony. No one moved until he took his seat. He reviewed every statement, every photograph, every witness account, every written response. He never raised his voice. He never showed anger. His calm expression somehow felt heavier than any shouting could have. Finally, he placed the last document on the table. He looked first at me, then at Ryan, finally at Evelyn. When he spoke, the entire room seemed to stop breathing. Honor is borrowed from no one. The words hung in the air. For the first time since the gala, I saw certainty disappear from Evelyn's face. She looked at the evidence, then at me, then back at Chairman Hale. The confidence she had carried into headquarters quietly fell apart, and I realized the investigation was no longer about a medal. It was about character. The formal hearing began at 9 o'clock. I sat at the far end of the room, listening to every word while trying to keep my emotions under control. Chairman Marcus Hale entered without looking at anyone. Let's begin. The room fell silent. The Foundation's legal advisor stood first. We have reviewed the witness statements, photographs, electronic communications, and recorded interviews. Chairman Hale nodded. Call Ryan Brooks. Ryan walked to the front with confidence that lasted only a few seconds. The legal advisor asked, "Did you know the Medal of Valor belonged to Mr. Carter?" Ryan cleared his throat. "Yes." "Did he give you permission to wear it?" "I thought Evelyn had already handled that." Chairman Hale looked up. "So your answer is no?" Ryan hesitated. "I assumed." "We're not asking what you assumed." Ryan lowered his eyes. "No." The legal advisor continued. "Why did you wear it?" Ryan shifted uncomfortably. "Evelyn said it would be fine." I looked at Evelyn. She stared at Ryan as if she couldn't believe what she had just heard. Her attorney leaned toward her. "Stay calm." Ryan kept talking. "I didn't take it myself." "You accepted it." "Yes." "Knowing it wasn't yours?" "Yes." The legal advisor thanked him and called Evelyn forward. She walked slowly to the front of the room. Chairman Hale folded his hands. "Mrs. Carter, who authorized the transfer of this medal?" Silence. He repeated the question. "Who authorized it?" She looked at Ryan. Ryan avoided her eyes. Chairman Hale spoke again. "Who?" Her lips parted, but no words came out. The silence became almost unbearable. I remembered every time she had defended Ryan. Every excuse. Every promise. Every moment she told me I was imagining things. Now there are no excuses left. Finally she whispered, "No one." Chairman Hale nodded once. "So the decision was yours." She closed her eyes. "Yes." The legal advisor placed another document on the table. The evidence clearly shows Mr. Carter requested the immediate return of his medal. Chairman Hale looked toward me. I met his eyes but said nothing. He turned back to Evelyn. "Do you dispute that?" "No." "Do you dispute removing the medal from your husband's display without permission?" "No." The chairman remained calm. "I appreciate your honesty." Ryan suddenly interrupted. "This isn't entirely my fault." Everyone looked at him. He pointed toward Evelyn. "She told me to wear it." Evelyn turned sharply. "You asked for it. You offered. You could have refused. You could have said no. You knew what it meant. I thought you had permission. You never asked. You never told me not to." The argument grew louder. Each sentence pushed responsibility onto the other. Neither wanted to carry the blame. I watched them in silence. For years, I believed trust was built by grand promises. Now I understood something different. Trust survived only when people accepted responsibility for their own choices. Chairman Hale raised one hand. "Enough." The room became quiet again. He reviewed the final pages. Then he looked at Ryan. "Mr. Brooks, you knowingly accepted and publicly displayed an honor that was never yours." Ryan swallowed. "You were suspended from all Foundation leadership programs for 1 year, and your eligibility for future recognition is revoked pending review." Ryan's shoulders dropped. Chairman Hale then faced Evelyn. His voice remained steady. "You held a position of leadership." She nodded weakly. "You were expected to protect the integrity of this foundation." Another nod. "Instead, you disregarded the meaning of its highest honor." She covered her mouth. Chairman Hale delivered his final decision. "A leader who cannot respect honor cannot lead others." The words echoed through the hearing room. Her appointment as Regional Operations Director was immediately revoked. A quiet gasp spread through the audience. Evelyn stared at the floor before slowly turning toward me. Her eyes filled with tears. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She didn't try to explain herself. For the first time since the gala, she truly understood what she had destroyed. It had never been about medal. It had been about the trust one placed in the woman I loved. And once that trust was broken, no title, promotion, or apology could restore it. I ignored the first call, then the second. By the time the 10th call came, I had stopped looking at the screen before pressing the silence button. Every message came from Evelyn. "Please talk to me. I'm sorry. Just give me 5 minutes." I never answered. For days, I buried myself in work, hoping exhaustion would silence the thoughts in my head. It never did. Every quiet moment brought back the same image. Ryan smiling, my medal on his jacket, Evelyn standing beside him as if nothing was wrong. One rainy evening, someone knocked on my apartment door. I already knew who it was. When I opened it, Evelyn stood there wearing a plain sweater instead of the tailored clothes she usually preferred. Her eyes were swollen from crying. "Can I come in?" she asked softly. I stepped aside without saying a word. She entered and looked around the apartment. "So this is where you've been hiding." "I'm not hiding. It feels like you are." I closed the door. "You wanted to talk." She nodded. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then she suddenly broke down. Tears rolled down her face faster than she could wipe them away. "I'm so sorry. I waited. I never wanted any of this." I remained silent. She covered her face with both hands. I thought it wasn't a big deal. Her words filled the room. I looked at her calmly. "That's exactly why we're here." She lowered her hands. "I know. No, you don't. I do. If you understood, none of this would have happened." She sat on the edge of the couch. "I've replayed that night 1,000 times. So have I. I wish I could change it." "You can't." She nodded slowly. "I know." Silence settled between us again. Finally, she whispered, "I kept trying to make everyone happy." I frowned. "What does that mean?" I didn't want Ryan to feel embarrassed. And I didn't want the guests asking questions. And I thought borrowing the medal would avoid an awkward situation. I looked at her. "What about me?" She closed her eyes. "I stopped thinking about you." The honesty hurt more than another excuse. She continued before I could answer. "Ryan always expected me to fix things." I stayed quiet. Even after we ended our engagement, I kept protecting his feelings. She laughed bitterly. I told myself it was kindness. It wasn't. No, it was betrayal. Fresh tears filled her eyes. "I see that now." I leaned against the window. "You didn't betray me in one night." She looked up. "What?" "It happened little by little." She stared at me. "Every time you defended him." Silence. "Every time you ignored how I felt." Silence again. "Every time you chose his comfort over my trust." She lowered her head. "I never realized I was doing that." "I did." She cried harder. "I'm sorry. I believe you." Hope briefly appeared on her face. Then I reached into the drawer beside the bookshelf. I removed a large envelope. She frowned. "What's that?" I placed it on the coffee table. She slowly opened it. The moment she recognized the documents, her hands began shaking. "No." She looked at me with wide, frightened eyes. "You filed for divorce?" "Yes." "You already signed them?" "Yes." She clutched the papers against her chest. "Please don't do this." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't insult her. I simply answered honestly. "I already lost my wife before the gala." She cried openly. "I can change. I hope you do. We can fix this. I can't rebuild trust by pretending it never broke." She shook her head over and over. "I still love you." I swallowed the ache in my throat. "I loved you enough to trust you with the most painful part of my life." She couldn't answer. The apartment became painfully quiet. Before leaving, she stopped at the door. I heard Ryan resigned. I looked at her. He hasn't called me once since the hearing. I wasn't surprised. He disappeared the moment people stopped praising him. She laughed through her tears. "I spent years protecting someone who walked away the second things became difficult." I said nothing. She wiped her eyes. "I sacrificed my marriage for a man who never truly cared whether I was in his life." Her voice cracked. "And I almost destroyed the only person who always did." She placed the signed divorce papers back into the envelope. "I don't deserve another chance." I didn't argue. She opened the door. Before stepping outside, she looked back one last time. "I'm sorry for every day I chose someone else's feelings over yours." Then she left. The apartment fell silent again. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel angry. I only felt sad. Sometimes the greatest cost of betrayal isn't losing the person who hurt you. It's accepting that the person you loved no longer exists except in your memories. Months passed more quietly than I expected. The divorce became final without another argument. Evelyn never challenged it. She signed every document and walked away with nothing except the consequences of her own choices. Life didn't suddenly become easier. It simply became honest. I moved into a smaller apartment across town. The glass display case came with me. For weeks, it stayed empty. One afternoon, the foundation contacted me. The receptionist smiled as I entered headquarters. Good morning. Morning. They're waiting for you upstairs. When I stepped into Chairman Marcus Hale's office, he stood and offered his hand. It's good to see you again. You too. He opened a small wooden case resting on his desk. Inside lay my Medal of Valor. Every scratch remained exactly where I remembered. For a long moment, I couldn't speak. He gently pushed the case toward me. It belongs with you. I carefully lifted the medal. It felt just as heavy as the day I earned it. Chairman Hale watched quietly. You know, he said, most people think courage is measured by what happens during a rescue. I looked at him. It isn't. He smiled faintly. No. What is it then? It's measured by what you choose afterward. I nodded slowly. I wasn't sure I handled any of this well. You did. I felt angry. Feeling anger isn't failure. I wanted revenge. But you chose restraint. I looked down at the medal. I almost let one terrible night define me. But you didn't. He folded his hands. You handled this with dignity. Those words meant more than another award ever could. Before I left, he handed me another envelope. What's this? A recommendation. I opened it. Inside was an offer to become an instructor for the Foundation's leadership program, helping train new rescue coordinators. I looked up. You really think I'm the right person? I know you are. A month later, I stood in front of my first class. 20 young recruits looked at me with curiosity. One raised a hand. Sir, what's the bravest rescue you've ever been part of? I smiled. That's not today's lesson. A few laughed. Another recruit asked, then what are we learning? I picked up my medal. We're learning why this isn't the most important thing in the room. They looked confused. One finally asked, isn't that the highest honor the Foundation gives? It is. Then why isn't it the most important? Because the person wearing it matters more than the medal itself. The room became quiet. I continued. Integrity isn't something people give you. Several recruits nodded. It's something you protect every day. Another recruit spoke. What if nobody's watching? I smiled. That's when integrity matters most. After class ended, I carried the medal home. This time, I didn't place it inside the living room display. Instead, I locked it inside a fireproof safe. Not because I want to hide it, because I finally understood what it represented. It wasn't a decoration. It wasn't proof that I was better than anyone else. It was a reminder of sacrifice, responsibility, and the friends who never came home from that rescue. Some memories deserve protection more than display. News about Evelyn reached me from time to time. She had resigned from every leadership committee connected to the Foundation. Instead of disappearing, she quietly began volunteering with organizations that supported injured first responders and families who had lost loved ones during rescue operations. She never appeared before cameras. She never tried to rebuild her reputation. She simply worked. One afternoon, I saw her across a community fundraising event. She was carrying boxes of donated supplies. She noticed me, but didn't approach. I walked over first. How are you? She offered a small, tired smile. I'm learning. What are you learning? That some mistakes can't be erased. I nodded. She looked at the ground. I don't expect forgiveness. I stayed silent. I only want to become someone who would never make the same choice again. There was no bitterness in her voice, only regret. We stood together for a moment before she returned to her work. I watched her help another volunteer without asking for recognition. For the first time, I realized she wasn't trying to earn her old life back. She was trying to become a better person than the one who had lost it. As I walked away, I touched the medal resting safely inside my bag. Months earlier, I thought victory would feel like watching someone else lose. I had been wrong. Real victory was rebuilding my own life without letting betrayal define the man I chose to become. Nearly a year had passed since the night my life changed. The Foundation's annual graduation ceremony filled the auditorium with families, instructors, and a new class of rescue professionals ready to begin their careers. This time, I wasn't sitting in the audience. I stood on the stage as one of the keynote speakers. Chairman Marcus Hale shook my hand before stepping aside. You've earned this moment, he said. I'll do my best. I know you will. The applause faded as I walked to the podium. Dozens of young graduates looked at me with excitement. Some looked nervous. Others looked determined. I remembered feeling exactly the same way when I first began my career. I adjusted the microphone. Good morning. Good morning, the graduates answered together. I've been asked to tell you about courage. A few smiled. I could tell you about collapsing buildings. The room stayed quiet. I could tell you about impossible rescues. No one spoke. I could tell you about the day I received the Foundation's Medal of Valor. I reached into a small case resting beside the podium. Carefully, I lifted the medal into the light. It reflected across the room. Every eye followed it. One graduate whispered, "That's incredible." I smiled gently. "No." The room became silent again. "This isn't made of metal." I held the medal a little higher. "It's made of sacrifice." Nobody moved. "It's made of fear." I paused. "It's made of responsibility." Another pause. "It's made of promises people kept when walking away would have been easier." I looked across the audience. "If you ever receive recognition, remember something important." Several graduates leaned forward. "The award doesn't make you honorable." I placed my hand around the medal. "Your choices do." The room remained perfectly still. Then I spoke the words that had lived inside me for months. "Never wear honor you didn't earn." Silence filled the auditorium before applause slowly began. It grew louder, then louder still. I thanked the audience with a small nod. As the applause continued, my eyes wandered toward the back of the room. I saw Evelyn standing quietly near the exit. She wore simple civilian clothes. No title, no special seat, no attention drawn toward her. She clapped with everyone else. When our eyes met, neither of us looked away. She offered a small, sad smile. It wasn't a request. It wasn't an apology. It was simply an acknowledgement of everything that had happened. I returned a respectful nod. Nothing more was needed. Chairman Hale stepped beside me. "You reached them." "I hope so." "You spoke from experience." "I spoke from regret." "And wisdom," he replied. As the ceremony ended, graduates surrounded me with questions. "What lesson should we remember most?" I smiled. "Protect your character before your reputation." Another asked why. "Because reputation depends on what people think. And character? Character depends on what you choose." They thanked me before joining their families. Eventually, the auditorium emptied. I walked outside, carrying the medal in its case. The afternoon sun felt warm on my face. For the first time in a long while, I noticed how peaceful the world could be. I wasn't carrying anger anymore. Not because Evelyn had somehow erased the past. Not because time had made betrayal acceptable. And not because she deserved forgiveness simply for regretting her choices. I had let go because I finally understood that holding on to pain would only keep me trapped in the worst chapter of my life. Peace wasn't something another person could give me. It was something I finally chose for myself. I placed the medal safely inside my bag and started walking toward the parking lot. Each step felt lighter than the last. The medal would always remind me of sacrifice. The betrayal would always remind me of the cost of misplaced trust. But neither would decide who I became. That decision had always belonged to me. As I drove home, one final thought settled quietly in my heart. She lost her position because she forgot what honor meant. I found my future because I never forgot.